we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to July TN Tarot. We are going to discuss the Wicked Witches when queens go rogue in our readings today. And this TN Tarot is a project of the Mount Shasta Goddess Temple and of the Goddess Temple app. So if you're on there, if you're on here, you probably know about it from those places. But today we're going to go through and discuss these different queen cards and kind of their tradition, some of their traditional meanings, but we're going to really talk more about like their reversed meanings or what they might mean if they come up in a reading in a place where you're not expecting, if you're not expecting them, like if you're not expecting a person showing up, or if they show up reversed, or if they show up as the problem, or if they're showing up as a person in the reading and you want to be able to understand more about what kind of implications that has for the light and shadow of that person. So I've got 3 sets of the queens here for us to kind of look at. The first set I have is our artwork by Pamela Coleman Smith in the Rider-Waite Smith deck. So we've got the Queen of Swords, Wands, Cups, and Pentacles. So we're going to start with these, and we're going to begin with the Queen of Swords, because of all the queens in the deck, the Queen of Swords is sort of the one who's already rogue. She's not archetypally motherly, even when she's right side up, which the other queens in the deck all kind of bring an archetypally motherly energy, whereas the Queen of Pentacles suggests physical motherhood, the Queen of Cups suggests nurturing, and the Queen of Wands suggests something that's less specifically stereotypically feminine, and instead is more of a host or CEO or boss energy. Still, all 3 of those cards suggest someone who in a situation can take command and can make sure things go all right. And the Queen of Swords departs from the other 3 very significantly insofar as she's typically considered more of a warrior, more of a loner. She specifically represents somebody who's childless, either by choice or by tragedy or by fate. And she comes along with strong messages of protection against female health problems. And that's one of the manifestations of the Queen of Swords when she's not in a good space in a reading, is that if your querent is female bodied, this can represent problems with breast cancer, fertility issues, endometriosis, or other conditions that might require surgery. So in even a positive sense in a reading, the Queen of Swords can suggest these things. But in a negative sense in a reading, she also can represent bitterness, loneliness, somebody who inadvertently chases people away, or who chases people away on purpose. Someone who's very difficult to get along with. In a negative sense in a reading, if she shows up reversed, she can represent dementia or other problems related to the mind. Her presence in a reversal often suggests that if the querent is female or has a female person near them that they're asking about, that there is something that has gone wrong. So when she's upright, it's still kind of a heavy message. when she's reversed, it can be an even heavier message. If she shows up as the crossing, then you're going to want to look at maybe broader categories if she's not specifically representing a person who's a difficult person. She can also represent difficult circumstances in which somebody feels upset, bitter, left out, neglected. Somebody feels anxious or anxiety prone. Somebody is on a treadmill of thoughts that they can't get out of their heads. She is in a crossing position occasionally can mean that there's nobody trustworthy at the helm of the ship in a work situation or a social situation, and that you're pretty much on your own. If she shows up in the position of like a lesson in the reading, it can mean that, we have to learn how to maintain our silence. If she shows up in the lesson position or in like what's the main thematic arc, it can mean that she's got some kind of like a heavy punitive energy that's coming at that person. So in a way, even though, sort of traditionally, the Queen of Swords may not represent or have anything to do with the planet Saturn, you still might consider her as having a Saturnine energy, like heavy karmic debts, or kind of the seeming cruelty of the universe sometimes when you hear about things like somebody retiring and then they die like 3 days later. That sort of thing belongs in the realm of a negative Queen of Swords card. So reversed in that lesson position can really be that it wasn't ever going to be any other way. And that's the sad truth. And, nobody really likes to hear it. And of all the queens we're going to talk about today, this one is the hardest one to stomach. So it's good that we're kind of getting her on the table and looking at these hard things. If the Queen of Swords shows up negatively aspected or reversed in the past, it can mean dwelling on things that are past and that you regret, that are beyond your control and that cannot be changed or reversed. So, regardless of the gender identity of the person that you're reading for or their sex, if you get this in the past in a negative way, it can represent sort of something like the brother in what's that movie? Napoleon Dynamite, who never can give up thinking about that one game in high school. And if they had just made it to the state championship, then his whole life would have been different. And he never gets beyond that. And so you see in this movie, I don't know if you've seen it, but if everyone's seen it, but if you watch Napoleon Dynamite, it's a comedy and it's a pretty good movie, a funny movie, but there's a lot of parts where this older brother just can't stop talking about the football game that he lost because he fumbled the ball and dropped it. And it was when he was in high school and how different his life would be if he hadn't dropped it. And then he keeps a bunch of footballs next to his front door of his house, and he'll tell people to throw the ball and he'll run and catch it again and again when people come over, so that in a way he's like trying to correct in the now what can't be changed from the past. If the Queen of Swords shows up negatively aspected or reversed in the present in a reading, it can mean that there's somebody who's actively working against you in the unseen world. So it can mean having an enemy, or it can mean having somebody who might not be actually trying to throw anything magical at you, but just their projections onto you or their thoughts about you are less than savory, and that negative energy is starting to stick to you and give you some obstacles that wouldn't necessarily otherwise be in your path. A negatively aspected Queen of Swords in the present time can also mean unfair treatment or unfair circumstances. So, for example, maybe you weren't speeding and someone in another car was speeding, but you're the one who got pulled over, and you try to explain, no, it was the other guy that was speeding. And they say, oh, yeah, everybody says that, but it's true. That kind of profoundly unfair treatment can come as a result of a negative Queen of Swords in the present. So you're going to want to prepare your querent for the fact that sometimes life just isn't fair. Sometimes things happen beyond our control that are just very difficult and maybe nonsensical. The Queen of Swords can also negatively aspected in the past, the present, or the future represent a breach of justice. So unless you have a balance of an upright King of Swords or an upright Justice card, it might mean unfair treatment either within or outside of the justice system. And in the future, if you get a negative Queen of Swords, it can obviously mean literally to watch out for somebody who doesn't have your best interests at heart, but it can also mean a circumstance in which you might not be given a fair shake, or a circumstance in which you're up against powers, often institutional powers, that are beyond your control. So, like if you pull this as your card of the day, don't try to go to the DMV that day. If you pull the, negative Queen of Swords, you're not going to want to talk to your insurance company that day, or your insurance adjuster, or your, like landlord or whatever, because the realm of swords is the realm of officialness. So in the realm of swords, we have all things related to government, law, procedure, bureaucracy, policy, things of this nature all kind of fall under the suit of swords. And a negative Queen of Swords means the one person in that deck who could potentially help you in that suit, who could potentially help you, likely won't. So watch out for negative aspected Queen of Swords in things like somebody going for a loan, or somebody going for a trying to start a new business or sign a lease or do something that's like that. You might want to sort of look beyond that Queen of Swords if it comes up in the future and say, well, okay, that's not ideal. How long would those circumstances be? Pull a card and see. If it's like 3 of Pentacles, okay, that could be like up to 3 years before this thing will be better for you. Or it could be like 3 months or 3 days or whatever, 3 weeks. But if you look beyond it and you see, okay, a more favorable card comes up after that, then you can just say to the person, this might be better if you delayed this, or just, even if you can't help it and you want to go for this thing that you're doing, please be aware that it might not go strictly smoothly for you for a while, and it might involve a lot of bumps in the road along the way. Especially procedurally, like they might lose your paperwork, or you might need some additional proof, or you might, have some kind of person who makes a clerical error that then sends you back to the drawing board. I had a client recently, she has a business that involves childcare. And so, all the regulations around those kinds of buildings are very strict, and you've got to have it all, lined up. And she was getting this Queen of Swords. And what was happening is that the city had told her, the building that you rent for your business is not up to code. We're going to penalize your business. And she said, why are you penalizing my business? And they said, because you can't operate under these conditions. And she said, well, I have to go to the landlord to get the work done, to get it up to code. And the landlord was dragging his heels, and that went on for months. And she lost hundreds of thousands of dollars of income that in a busy urban area during that time of the landlord not taking action. And she was like between the landlord and the city. There was like no way out. And so she kept having to like limit what she was doing. And then she would have to go back to the city and get another extension. And then she had to go to the landlord, and the landlord was dragging his heels. And then she discovered that the landlord hadn't submitted the paperwork that he said he had submitted to get the permits to do the corrections on the building so that it could be up to code. So that's one example of a negative Queen of Swords. But then after, maybe like 7 months of this, she came back for another reading, and then we were clear to go with an upright Queen of Pentacles, which is a very successful businesswoman. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. The other thing, and I think I've mentioned this example before in the past, if I have, forgive me if you heard it again, but one time I had a client who called me up and she said, I really, I went to the doctor. I'm going to the doctor tomorrow because I'm getting results of a test that they did. And I just want to know if I'm going to be okay. And the card came up upright, and it was, or the card came up reversed, Queen of Swords reversed. And I said, and then the card after it, there was another one after it that gave some hope to the situation. And I said to her, when you go to the doctor, I think they're going to tell you that you have breast cancer and that you need to get a mastectomy. However, you need to go and get a second opinion. Don't just take the date and do the surgery. Go get a second opinion. And she said, okay. And sure enough, the next day she went in, she was given the diagnosis, stage 4 breast cancer, have to schedule a mastectomy immediately. And she said, okay, may I get a second opinion? She got a lot of pushback, of course, being a woman in the medical space. Asking for a second opinion already kind of gave them a sense that she had an attitude or that she was being difficult, but she insisted. And so much so that even though her insurance company would not co-sign for a second opinion, she paid out of pocket, went to a different doctor completely outside of her network. They said, no, you don't need a mastectomy, and this is not cancer. What you have here is abnormal tissue. Let's watch it for 6 months and come back and see what happens. She never ended up getting the mastectomy. Her breasts were completely healthy and remain healthy to this day. So a negative Queen of Swords can be, depending on the cards around it, can mean bad news about women's health, especially women's health, but can also mean push a little further because there can be some bureaucracy or something happening at a level beyond what's visible to you that you need to investigate more closely. So that is our Queen of Swords in her Wicked Witch form. In her benevolent witch form, the Queen of Swords is kind of a wicked witch. So just keep that part in mind. So that was the hardest of the queens. And now we're going to move on to some other ones. And each of them has their own difficulties, but the Queen of Swords is the one that has, I would say, stereotypically the worst news associated with it when she shows up in a negative way. So the next one we're going to look at is the Queen of Wands. And the Queen of Wands is off in her upright state. I mentioned she's the boss. And this is not necessarily like always the boss of a business. It can be. There's definitely entrepreneurial energy that goes along with the entire suit of swords. The whole court of swords has that like, I'm going to do it my way kind of energy. So there's something very powerful in that. She is, as a mom, as a leader, tends to be somebody who wants to make sure that everybody is having a good time, that everybody's happy. There's a positive energy about her when she's upright that's like hostess with the mostest. She can spread herself a little thin. She doesn't always follow through, but that's forgivable because she is, somebody who gets a lot done. She's a highly accomplished person. In the negative, and this is very important, in our world, a lot of people, but especially women, have amazing genius ideas that they never follow through on because they feel disempowered or afraid, or they don't know where to begin. And so the Queen of Wands reversed, or the Queen of Wands negatively aspected in a reading as the querent, can basically mean, if you pull that card, you want to blow somebody's mind, pull that Queen of Wands reversed at the center of the reading representing the querent, look at them in the eye and say, what dream did you walk away from? And watch them just break down, because it means that they are carrying something within them that they wanted so badly, that they felt so passionate about, that they wished for so much, that they saw, they could feel it, they could taste it. It seemed like it could happen, but then it didn't. Something blocked it, something happened. It never worked out the way that they thought it would. And they're carrying the heat within them of the burning frustration of this dream that went unfulfilled. And an example of this was a reading I did where a middle, kind of like mid 30s woman in her mid 30s came in, and I pulled this card right away, and all around it was this reverse Queen of Wands at the center. All around it were all these upright cards, like about that were Pentacles, like Page of Pentacles, Three of Pentacles, Queen of Pentacles. And I was like, it looks like they really value you at your job, but you hate it. It looks like your family really values everything you do for them, but you feel resentful because they don't actually do the same for you. And it looks like you are always the one that people know they can depend on, but you don't know who you can depend on. And immediately it was just tears, like, just how did you know that? And not only that, but she also later in that reading had a reverse King of Cups. And I was able to say to her, why didn't you become a writer? And she was blown away. She was like, how did you know? And I was like, because it shows me here that you had a fork in the road where you deferred the dream of your life, which was to become a writer, in pursuit of being dutiful in all other ways. So you were dutiful in your work, you're dutiful in your family, and you're dutiful in your friendships. But on the inside, it burns you alive to feel the frustration of not being able to become the artist that you wanted to become. And she was like, I just feel like I couldn't do that. Like I don't even know how I would begin to do that. And I said, well, what would it look like if you just went and took a writing workshop for yourself? Just start there. And then I was able to hear from her like 6 months later that she had actually gone and taken the writing workshop. She loved it. She felt so fulfilled. And the next step she was going to do was to enroll herself in a master's degree level writing program so that she could forefront this dream that had been unfulfilled for so long. So there's this burning within the heart of the Queen of Wands reversed, which is yearning for something so much and feeling like it's just out of reach or not for you, or that you will never be able to do it, or that it's too big of a dream. So that's if you get that at the center. If you get the Queen of Wands negatively aspected in the crossing, it can mean somebody who is very jealous of you or jealous of your querent. It can mean somebody who feels very competitive with you or with your querent. It can mean that there's a situation in which like a Jolene type situation where you could easily be bested by somebody, even though you are doing your best, and you feel the profundity of despair around that, where it's like, how can I even compete? I don't even know if I have what it takes, where you or your querent is looking at, is sitting and like looking down the barrel of your your next step and feeling like it's an exercise in futility because someone else will triumph and it won't be you or it won't be your querent. There can also be, when you see the Queen of Wands negatively aspected as the crossing card, I will tell you something, and I'm sure many of you already know this. Perimenopausal rage is real. I saw a great TikTok the other day that said, never argue with a woman over 40 because they are full of rage and sick of everyone's shit. And that to me is an apt description of a Queen of Wands crossing, especially if the person sitting in front of you is a middle-aged woman going, fuck everything, is just mad, is just like, and this, and that, and this, and this, and that, and then I read the news, and that, and all I want is some peace. And this comes up as you're crossing, and you just have to be like, we have to figure out how you're going to get to turn all of this energy into something that is going to be transformational for you. Because you can either stay in this frustration for the next 5 to 10 years of your life, or you can take this frustration when it arises, cap it as best you can into some kind of a combustible crucible and let your dream go in there and brew so that it will explode and go in all good directions for you. And you will have the manifestation of that dream for yourself in this life at some point. So that's the Queen of Wands in a crossing position. Competition, jealousy, feeling the futility of trying, and frustration, or it can be menopausal and perimenopausal rage is a very real thing and definitely needs room to be expressed and needs to be channeled into something that will ultimately be creative. Ideally, that you take all of that and pour it into a dream that you're holding for yourself 5 to 10 years from now, so that when you get there to the other side of that fiery threshold, all the goodness is waiting for you, because you will not be able to avoid the fiery time. That fiery time, and I know because I'm in it, is a very, very profound change. And it is a time of your life when everything, even, your deepest loyalties are on the table for evaluation, and where you're ready to cut ties with people, you're ready to make changes, you're ready to walk away from anything that disrespects you. So you can channel that to power, or you can be grumpy and frustrated for 5 to 10 years of your life. If your Queen of Wands shows up negatively aspected in the lesson of the reading, it's really about a person who's been pushed to their limits and does not know how to provide for themselves the space of relief and serenity, or the space of relaxation and healing and nourishment that they need. And so you'll see this in the lesson position, this reverse or negatively aspected Queen of Wands, in the reading of somebody who's gotten to the point of overwhelm, that they no longer have discernment and they just say yes to everything, and they feel increasingly buried by their obligations. They feel like it's just piling on. So when you see that in that position, know that this is a person who, if you say to them, maybe you should do some self-care, some journaling, they are going to be like, okay, but it's actually just adding another thing onto their plate that they don't need. What you actually need to do is to immediately find a way yourself as the reader to introduce more of a watery energy into the reading, to wash away some of the obligations that this person thinks that they must carry, and to show them that actually they do not have to take responsibility for a lot of the things that they might be carrying, such as other people's demands, other people's feelings about them, other people's projections, or that they're you can work on helping that person get to see that eventually they will have a threshold where they have to make a decision, and where they can take all this frustration and channel it into one very powerful statement of no, rather than saying yes to everything and then feeling dragged along behind the donkey cart of their own life that's loaded down with all the things they've said yes to that they didn't think they had a choice about. So that's one of the ways that you see a negative Queen of Wands in the lesson. In the past, a negative Queen of Wands can represent a very domineering mother figure who did not allow the querent or yourself to have the natural range of life lesson experiences that would give you resiliency, or would give your querent resiliency. So this is somebody who, in the ferocity of their desire to protect, has limited a person in their life from fulfilling what they needed to fulfill, or from learning what they needed to learn in order to be strong. The Queen of Wands in a past position can also indicate a rival or a competitor of the past who is extraordinarily, and this also would go for the present and the future, would be somebody who has a very competitive or very manipulative way of being. So sometimes the Queen of Wands is, especially in that lesson position, is that barely suppressed volcanic energy. But other times, like if it's not the querent, or it's outside of the querent, or depending on other factors in the reading, it might also be somebody who is a manipulator, a master manipulator. This would be like Southern Belle type energy, like, well, aren't you sweet? Or like, well, bless your heart. That like manipulative energy that kind of comes under the guise of being in some way sweet or kind or sociable or nice, but is actually deeply embedded with an agenda of control or competition or jealousy. So beware of a reverse Queen of Swords in regards to a querent having people around them who might seem nice or seem trustworthy, but actually are not. And then depending on the other cards around that, there should be visible antidotes in the reading so that you can say, here's how you test if somebody really has your best interests at heart. Here's how you'll know if this person who, seems nice is actually nice. Maybe they're not actually nice. So there's your Queen of Wands reversed. Now let's move forward a little bit. Maybe there's like, let me think, there's like one or two more things about Queen of Wands that I wanted to say. Oh, I also feel like Queen of Wands reversed can refer to certain types of anxiety, whereas maybe a Queen of Swords reversed is more like the kind of anxiety that can give rise to more obsessive behaviors or depressive behaviors. The Queen of Wands anxiety gives rise to more aggressive behaviors. So somebody who acts out. I don't know if you've seen recently, there was a video of a white woman in a Victoria's Secret store who said something to a Black woman, and then the Black woman was like, I'm not even going to wait to see what happens here. I'm going to just start recording you because I need this for proof later that I didn't touch you. The Black woman moved to the other side of the store to another, so that there was a visible physical barrier of a big, like not clothing rack, product rack between them, and was trying to talk to the management to say, this woman is threatening me, and it doesn't, I feel unsafe. And the white woman on the other side of the clothing rack was screaming and screaming and saying, stop recording me. And how dare you? Don't even look at me. And it was like that kind of behavior of like, don't breathe my air. Don't look at me. And then that white woman had a complete and utter meltdown to the point where she was on the floor of the store screaming. And when the security came from the shopping center, guess who got in trouble? The Black woman. Even though she had the recording to prove she had done nothing. She had literally just been standing there and saying to this woman, this is ridiculous. Please stop doing this. And she kept her calm the whole time. So that kind of, behavior, which is aggressive anxiety. It was obvious that that white woman on the floor screaming was having some kind of a panic attack, and we don't know what motivated that. Her racism obviously figured into it, but maybe she was having a bad day or some other thing was happening that she was already on edge. But whatever it was that pushed her over the edge, it then resulted in an extraordinarily aggressive manifestation of this anxiety that ended up, and we all know, I mean, we watch the news, the Black woman in that situation, if it were police, not security guards, could have been killed. So it's important to just be aware that that reverse Queen of Wands has that capacity to lash out, to slash someone's tires, to, go full on, like ballistic on somebody. So that's a negative Queen of Wands. That's the Wicked Witch of the South. The Wicked Witch of the West, Queen of Cups. So upright, the Queen of Cups is kind, emotionally intelligent, compassionate, psychic, a dreamer, an artist, very nurturing and nourishing, a good listener, somebody who takes seriously the feelings of others, who is probably very skilled at mediation. But when she's reversed, there is, or in a negative aspect in a reading, the Queen of Cups can represent for you or for the querent, somebody who is emotionally unsophisticated. That means that they tend to react very strongly when given any criticism. Like, for example, if you were to say to a reverse Queen of Cups, hey, that thing you said the other day, I was thinking about it and it just didn't sit right with me, and I really want to clean that up with you. That person will likely respond with something like, fine, I can never do anything right. I know, yet another way that I've messed up your life. And where you're like, well, no, I'm just trying to say it was just this thing, and I just feel like we need to talk about it. Then that person is like, no, it's fine. Like, we don't need to talk about it. What do you need to say? There's a toxicity to the emotional nature of that interaction that doesn't allow any room for your emotions. And that's the thing. The Queen of Cups, when she's upright, is great in a certain way because she's deep, she's wise, she's perceptive, she is unafraid to go into the ocean of feeling and the ocean of possibility with you to help you surface the lessons that are meant for you. These are all great qualities, but when she is reversed, she can be like a tsunami or a tidal wave, or she can drag you under, or she can be like the siren, right? Trying to like lure you into a trap that will result in something that harms you. So this can also be the gossip in the office who says something to you about someone else, she's the one who says it, but then later goes around and tells everyone that you said it. This can be the person who is all up in your business and seems like she really wants to help you and like really cares about you. And it's like, oh, you poor thing. It sounds like it's been so terrible. But then the minute you start to thrive again, she's no longer in the picture. She disappears, or she starts to find fault with you, because a reverse Queen of Cups likes you broken, because it gives her a sense of power. And she then feels like she's got something over you. A reverse Queen of Cups can also have a syrupy sweet, similar to the Queen of Wands reverse in the syrupy sweet manipulation tactic. But whereas the Queen of Wands is a little bit more blatant about like what she wants, like more like being nice to you to get you to like buy her kid's candy bar from the school sale. It's with the Queen of Cups. There's not necessarily an aim to the emotional manipulation. She just likes to kind of be in other people's energy field. And she's got a kind of a clinging or a cloying quality so it's syrupy and sticky, as opposed to kind of syrupy and desirous of something. The Queen of Cups doesn't actually usually know what she wants for herself, because she has replaced her wants for herself with her projections of what other people want her to do. And so she's always the victim, but she's only ever actually the victim of her own self. Because if you were to say to a Queen of Cups reversed, so just say no, like whatever, it's cool. Just like, if you don't want to do that, just say no. Then she's like, oh, I can't. She will not haul herself out of that victim status. She will not step out of it. She needs that victim status because it's part of the identity she's formed around reacting to the emotions of others, as opposed to cultivating emotional health in herself. And, if, by the way, anybody feels like, ooh, sometimes that's me, or, ooh, I have that in me, like, it's okay. Like, this is how we learn to work on it, is by seeing it in the world. And if you see any part of yourself in any of these queens, then you're like, yee, like, or like, I have that. Like, I know myself, the reason I bring it up is because I know myself. Sometimes people will be like, just say like, fuck off and walk away. And I'm like, oh, I don't think I can, but really, because why? It's self-imposed. This is part of my journey. I'm just revealing, like, it's part of my journey is to learn like how to get to the point of emotional clarity in myself, because I grew up in a dysfunctional situation where there was some codependency, and there was not abuse, but never abuse, but there was definitely high demand and high expectations on me, where people pleasing is one of my big trauma responses. So if I feel traumatized, or if I feel unsafe in some way, I'm more likely to go into people pleasing mode than into fuck off and walk away mode, which is actually where I belong. But it's very difficult for me to get there because of early childhood patterning. So I have to just recognize that in myself, and to know, excuse my French, but I'm sure you've heard me say it before. I'm not too worried. If you come to Tia and Tarot, you've heard me curse, and so here we are. So Queen of Cups, if you have any of that in yourself, if you feel like you often find yourself waiting around for someone else's emotions to dictate the way things are going to go, you got to learn to step back from that, because that's unhealthy. That's an unhealthy manifestation of your trauma response empathy. Whereas the healthy manifestation of your trauma response empathy is to be able to recognize when other people are in distress in a way you have once been in distress, and to see if you can do something to help. Maybe you can suggest a resource, or you can listen, or you can cook them dinner, or you can do their laundry, or you can babysit their kids. There's 1,000 things you can do when someone is going through a hard time and they're experiencing a trauma response. It's a whole different story when you're getting swept up in your own trauma response as a way of responding to someone else's trauma response. And that's where a lot of toxic love affairs begin. Is I'm broken, you're broken, let's be broken together because at least we feel good while being broken together. And it's also an arena in which, if this shows up in the lesson position, speaking of that, if the Queen of Cups shows up in the lesson position of your reading, you are likely to undervalue yourself, or your querent is likely to undervalue themselves. A Queen of Cups doesn't know what she looks like in the outside world. She thinks of herself differently than others think of her. So a negatively aspected Queen of Cups in the lesson is like, are you appropriately valuing yourself? Are you demanding or asking for or walking in such a way that you value yourself at the level that you genuinely deserve? You value your skills, you value your knowledge at a level that you genuinely deserve? Or are you constantly putting yourself at a lower level because you want people to like you, or because you're afraid that people won't, or because you don't know what you are really capable of because you don't have that outside mirror and you're down in the depths? In the negative position, negatively aspected in the lesson position in a reading. And like when I say lesson, that can mean like in the hopes and fears category, or can mean like in the life lesson, and it depends on what spread you're using, but in the lesson position. It can also mean somebody whose psychic gifts were suppressed at an early age due to a frightening experience. And now those psychic gifts are popping up like beach balls coming out from under the water. And the person has no idea how to handle it and is just trying to shut it down. And that is a very difficult situation, because people will get into a really can get themselves into a really bad position, particularly people who are gifted at mediumship and working with the dead or working with the spirits. A lot of times I've seen this happen many more times than once. I've seen this happen at least 10 times in my career of readings, where somebody came in and they got this reverse Queen of Cups in the lesson position, and where it actually meant that as a child, they saw a dead person in a ghostly form, and they were so frightened by what they saw that they cut off instantly, traumatically cut off their psychic gifts. And now they struggle to make decisions. They make poor choices of lovers. They end up always somehow going in the wrong direction from what would have been advantageous. People around them can see this, but they often can't see it for themselves. On at least one of those occasions, it was the person's partner who brought them to me, because the person themselves would have never scheduled a reading because they were so afraid of all this world. But the person's partner was like, I actually think you are having like breakthrough psychic experiences, and you need to talk to somebody who knows about that. And in fact, in that case, this person was having a hard time discerning if there was actually a person in the room with them or not, because they were seeing manifestations, but they thought that those were real people, and had almost gotten in a car accident because they thought someone was sitting in the passenger side of the car that they got into their car when they got in and started driving, and they looked over and saw a man sitting in the car with them, but it wasn't a real one, not a live one. So in the lesson position, the suppression of psychic gifts in such a way that now it's kind of come out of the box and the person is unprepared. In that case, look for your contextual cards around that so that you can give them practices, exercises, and antidotes to help them with this so that they can have a fruitful journey, a productive journey, rather than a fearful journey with this gift. In the past, a Queen of Cups reversed or in a negative position can mean growing up in a codependent household, or growing up in an emotionally dysfunctional household, or growing up with a either overly emotionally involved parent, often the mother, or an emotionally completely uninvolved parent. So I'll address those two separately. For the overly emotionally involved parent, that's where you're going to see some of the people-pleasing behaviors. You're going to see some of the like, I just want you to like me. You're going to see a confusion in their ability to process intense emotional interactions and move on. They'll cling to signs of what they think of as signs of hope in a love relationship, even when there's nothing there. So like, I had a person say to me that they were sure that this other person was really in love with them, but just didn't know how to express it. And of course, when I did the reading, I was like, that is absolutely not what's going on here. Like, dude, he's just not into you. You know, like it was just like not happening. And the person really thought that they were having a subtextual love affair, and that expressions of like, hey, or what you doing, were subtle ways of letting this person know that there was a relationship happening, and that it was just because the other individual was so emotionally wounded that they couldn't express it directly. And that was an entire fantasy that was happening in this person's mind. So it can be a Queen of Cups reversed, can be that kind of a situation. Now, and that often is the result of an overly emotionally involved parent, where the individual, like, and it could be like I should say not just only involved, but emotionally complicated parent, such as like a parent who is an alcoholic or an addict who changes their emotional state very frequently, and so is unreliable in terms of affirmations of love, or where it was an overly involved parent who was like, you don't feel that way, you feel this way, and was gaslighting the person, so that now they are unconsciously doing that to others and projecting how others are feeling, but it's not, it's just coming from inside their own heads. In the negative position, the Queen of Cups with an emotionally uninvolved parent who didn't really care. This is like a person who's like a baby duck and is always looking for a mommy. And there's always going to be that, like, are you my mommy? Are you my mommy? And what that person will do is they will go through people again and again and again, where they think, now I've finally found that mommy figure that I was looking for, that I wished I had had. And then, of course, when that person who hasn't consensually signed up for that role in their life fails to be that motherly figure, this person will become angry and will maybe cut that person out, or will become really hurt and will feel like they've been treated poorly by that individual. It may or may not be the case that that person was being treated poorly. It may just be that the person that they thought was going to be that kind of parental figure to them didn't do what they wanted or expected. And then it further ends up reinforcing the sense of nobody loves me. I never had the love that I needed in my life. I'll never have the love that I need in my life, until that person ends up moving on to find the next mommy figure, and the whole cycle starts again. So that can be in the past, present, or future, that you can be dealing with somebody like that. So if you get that, it's not always you or your querent. Sometimes it's somebody near the querent who's doing that to the querent, and the querent is like not aware that they've been unintentionally placed and unconsensually placed in that mommy role, and is like, I don't understand. Like, I just said I couldn't make it for dinner because I had a really bad stomach ache. And then it was like the next day I got this like 6-page email saying, why don't you care about me? I care. I just didn't make dinner. Let's go Saturday instead. Right. So look for those kinds of manifestations with the Queen of Cups reversed or in a negative aspect. The Queen of Cups reversed is definitely emotionally sticky and complicated. And then let's see, other magical things. Queen of Cups reversed can also be a period of disturbing dreams, can be a situation in which emotions have inappropriately entered the circumstance. Like if you're doing a work reading, a work related reading for somebody, and they are asking you like if they're going to get a promotion, and then you get like a reverse Queen of Cups in that outcome, you're going to maybe need to say, you know, are you having a relationship with someone at your job? Or is there anything going on that is like, you know, kind of emotionally very intense at your job? Because a Queen of Cups brings a cup full of emotions, and the reverse Queen of Cups literally brings them and dumps them out on your table, and you have to sort out what was in that cup. And it's, you know, the liquid is running everywhere, and you've got to go get your towels and mop it up. So look for, you know, inappropriate manifestations of emotion around Queen of Cups, and periods of like, you know, visions, psychic abilities. A reverse Queen of Cups can also be for somebody who's usually very psychic or usually very in tune, can be feeling like all of a sudden my gift just dried up and where did it go? And then, you know, just do a timing reading, do 3 cards afterwards. If you get that, do like 3 cards after it to look and see, when will this clear up? How will I know that it cleared up and that I'm back on track? And what do I need to do to get there? Maybe they need to do a purification ceremony. Maybe they need to just take some time off from psychic work. Maybe there's something that's looming that they've been investigating so strongly psychically that they're driving themselves into anxiety and fear, and they need to put it down for a while. And so their third eye is just trying to shut them down because it's tired of roaming. You know, the third eye is like been roaming, you know, like a cell phone. And so just be cautious about that. Okay, so that's our Queen of Cups. Finally, our final Wicked Witch, the Wicked Witch of the North, is our Queen of Pentacles. And the Queen of Pentacles, when she's upright, is a good mother, you know, a good worker, often is financially successful, either in her own business, although I think of the Queen of Wands more entrepreneurially than the Queen of Cups. I see the Queen of Cups more as like the CEO of someone else's company, but in, or like HR department, or, you know, she's in a high, this is a person who's in a highly relational kind of connected field and is successful with it and helps to create team or group spirit. Reversed, the Queen of Pentacles is very controlling and very domineering and very particular, wants things the way she wants them. Not necessarily a bad quality, but not always the most team-oriented quality. And so a healthy, upright Queen of Pentacles is like, yes, I'm, able to bring together a group of people in common purpose, help steer us towards success, get to the end, thank everyone, express genuine gratitude, and then we let go and move on. Whereas the Queen of Pentacles is always like kind of like reverse, is kind of always looking for where can there be a hook or a bind or a tie that would keep it going, that would hold it together, that would keep that energy flowing even beyond its expiration date. And that's sometimes the result of dysfunctional family paradigms where, you know, people are trying to replicate their replicate a family dynamic where there isn't one. The Queen of Pentacles reversed can also be somebody who is in a position of power, but actually isn't filling the shoes of that position of power, where, you know, maybe somebody has worked their way up in a job or a role, but really didn't get the level of training that they needed in order to conduct the role appropriately. Or could be somebody who's like, was the coworker and then got promoted to the boss and is now feeling super confused because the people who used to be colleagues and friends are now subordinates. And it's a weird shift that's happened. It's a strange dynamic for that person. So it's not always like, it's not sinister necessarily. It's just sometimes it's uncomfortable. The other thing about a Queen of Pentacles reversed can be somebody who does not manage money well, is struggling financially, or has a hard time making wise financial decisions, somebody who has a hard time planning for the future. Queen of Pentacles reversed can be about physical health problems, not specific to female health, but just in general. So can be like things like overweight or high blood pressure or diabetes or chronic conditions, chronic pain, things like that. Sometimes if you do a reading for somebody and that reverse Queen of Pentacles come up, that might be one of the things that you just ask. Obviously, like we're not doctors, we can't medicate, diagnose, nor prescribe, but you might just say, you know, it looks like you maybe have some physical stuff going on that's been really stressful and made things harder. And it makes it harder for you to think clearly and to take the action in the world that you want to take. And sometimes that can lead to really sensitive conversations, like somebody sort of saying, yeah, like I really want to go to the beach and I want to go swimming, but I don't like the way I look in a swimsuit and I feel afraid. And so I just don't go, you know. Ultimately, a healthy Queen of Pentacles is in a state of belonging wherever she goes. So she doesn't need to like fit into any paradigm or feel any or look any one way. She just belongs everywhere. She makes herself belong. That's a great quality of a Queen of Pentacles, is that the whole world is her like place, you know. She's a world citizen. But the reverse Queen of Pentacles, you're going to find often a secret place of never feeling like there's belonging behind it. And that can be because of physical health issues. It can be because of appearance issues. It can be because of socioeconomic issues, all things related to our body temple, our physical security, and our well-being. In the lesson position, a reverse Queen of Pentacles really asks, what are you holding on to so tightly from your small you that you're blocking out what the big you actually wants and is capable of? And sometimes, because Queen of Pentacles is associated with the element of earth, you know, I'm a Taurus, we get really stuck in our ways. Like we can just be like, I really think this was the dream that I've had ever since I was 5 years old. And you know, so then we're living inside of it. But what happens when that dream like comes and goes? It's been accomplished. You did it. Move on. What's your new dream? And then the person doesn't have one because they were holding on to that one so tightly that they don't know how to form a new dream, and they feel anxious to try, and they feel like they don't kind of know where to go next. So that can be in that lesson position. Like, are you holding on to something like a past identity or a past thing so tightly that you're, you know, locked into it. A Queen of Pentacles in the negative lesson position can also resonate with financially being dependent and not needing to be dependent. So, and this is it's not a condition that's exclusive to women. Certainly there's all different kinds of people who find themselves in this situation, but historically we have in our world a much more widespread paradigm of global patriarchal domination that ensures female dependency. So, for example, women not being allowed to own property, not being allowed to vote, not being allowed to claim custody of their children. There's all over the world, there's been laws and rules set up in a very patriarchal way that have limited women's agency to being able to make decisions for themselves or to claim anything for themselves, and to effectively relegate us into a position of dependency. And then that position of dependency is bolstered as a symbol of class. So then a woman who is able to stay at home all the time and care for the children and care for the family because a man or a partner of any gender goes out and is the primary breadwinner, that woman might not always feel like she could verbalize that she feels unhappy being eternally dependent, but within her, there might be something that she would have loved to do in this life that was her own, and to have a separate, independent identity. And so encouraging, if you see this and, somebody's like, well, everything's fine. And, it's all okay. And I'm taking care of everybody. I just wanted to check in. You can try to see if you can get under the hood of that situation a little bit and look around and be like, is there anything that you'd like to do outside of the home? Have you ever thought about getting a little part-time job so that you have your own little nest egg? Have you ever thought about having a little like volunteer gig that you do that gets you away from caregiving duties? All of that kind of stuff. So that is partially a frustrated lesson, Queen of Pentacles, reversed or negatively aspected. In the past, present, or future, the Queen of Pentacles upside down or reversed or negatively aspected can speak to a feeling of inadequacy in leadership, a feeling like you have to report to somebody who you don't respect, for example, or can speak to a situation in which you would very much like to move up or move on in a job setting or in a leadership setting, but you're not given the chance. Or there's the possibility that there's been some kind of effort made to suppress your gifts in some way, or suppress your abilities in some way, to create a situation where you feel like, there's nowhere for you to go, even though you're deserving. So that's one aspect. Another aspect of Queen of Pentacles reversed in past, present, or future can be somebody who is, a competitor, but not necessarily a competitor aggressively, like a Queen of Wands, more a competitor just like by fate and circumstance. You are thrust into a situation where you're going to be competing and you might be going up against some tough competition. So it's important to know that. When you see a negatively aspected Queen of Pentacles in past, present, or future, it can also indicate a period of financial struggle where there's just like everything you're trying isn't working. Like you might be applying, sending out 10 resumes a day and it's still nothing, nobody's biting, or where, you just can't seem to catch a break because debts are just rolling in, or you're accumulating, you're getting bill after bill after bill. So in that case, you're going to want to pull cards, pull down again, like 3 cards about what's next, so that you can discern antidotes, or when will this period lift? Because we all go through times sometimes where, the cupboard is a little bare, or the wallet is a little bit slender. Everybody has, I mean, very few people don't have those. I guess Jeffrey Bezos never has those days, but like most of us have those times where it's like, ooh, like I'm kind of running a little low right now, but they clear. With the Queen of Pentacles reversed, you can sometimes see that situation, and then you can look to other cards as the antidote. What will happen next, and how can the person either bear up under those situations, those conditions, or do something different so that they can change those conditions. The other thing that a Queen of Pentacles can indicate is problems with mother-child relationship. So it can be either you or your querent, or somebody near the querent, or their querent's mother, or the querent's child, indicating that there's been some break or division between a mother and child, or a parent and child, and that when that break happens, it's painful, and a lot of times it's very difficult to reconcile why it's happened, or to really see how it could be fixed. Because there is one thing that most people feel the safest in the world to do when they are anxious and individuating in life, and that is to blame their mother for all of their problems. And we live in a world where, there are many, many mothers who get blamed for things that are not actually their fault. And I'm not saying that all mothers are angels and perfect. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that sometimes a mother is, could be a very good mother doing her best, but has a child that in the process of individuation has felt like they need to push away from the mother in order to get their sense of freedom. And I think individuation involves that kind of inherently in some cases. It's sort of like just what happens, that we push away from our parents to find who we are. But in other cases, that individuation is a condemnation, a blame, and a stigmatization of the mother, as if she's the one responsible for the child's problems. And sometimes that is really the only thing that can heal that, is time and the child having their own experiences of life, so that the child can come to see that it wasn't the mother who was doing that at all, that it was just life, and that the mother didn't make that happen, and that the mother couldn't protect them from that happening either. So, individuation of the mother-child relationship can be a tough one. And certainly the Queen of Pentacles reversed can indicate that. Mary Beth says, going through exactly this scenario, painful. Yeah, Mary Beth, and I pray for you all the time about it. I really, really want that to end, and for your child to ripen into the mature knowing that you have done your best, and that nobody here has an ideal situation, and that all of that considered, she had it really good with you. And that you made sure that it was fun, even when it was hard. And that you made sure that there was freedom to choose. And the fact is, sometimes a parent who is lovingly giving their child space to individuate, this is sort of the shit of it, really, excuse my French, but like I had very strict parents. So my rebellion was a just rebellion. I finally was like, okay, no, I'm out of here. I'm going to go, I'm going to like do stuff. I'm going to have my own experiences. I'm going to, make my own mistakes. But it's really almost harder when a parent, it's almost harder emotionally on the parent when the parent has been like, I gave you everything. I supported you in anything you wanted to do. There was nothing to rebel against here. I never held you to a standard other than the standard that you set for yourself of your own happiness. I've only wanted your happiness. And for the child to be like, I still need to push away from you. And that's because the child needs something to push on. It doesn't actually have much to do with who you are or what you did. I was just thinking yesterday that if you're to take the swimming as the analogy, there's only so much momentum that we can get pushing off from the side of the pool into the water. But after that, we have to learn to paddle and kick. And sometimes, pushing off from the side of the pool into the water can be helpful, but, it can get you a little head start, but it will never teach you to paddle and kick. And so, just for you or for your parents or anyone who's going through this, as readers, one of the best things that we can do when we do encounter this situation, which is far more common than many people talk about in our society, we can start to help empower a mother who is going through that with kindness and compassion, and helping her to see that she doesn't need to have her child's understanding to validate her experience as a mother, and that we can help when we get a parent who is a child like that by saying, you should probably call your mom. And the number of times I've said that phrase in the past 20 years, numbers in the thousands. Just call your mom. And the reality is, you don't have to do anything other than just be you. And most of the time, that's all that it takes. So, of course, Mary Beth, my wish for you is that that will happen, that you'll get that phone call. Sometimes a Queen of Pentacles doesn't get an apology, but it still turns out okay. So Tara says, as a mother of boys, I'd say have girls if you want them to stay in touch, half joking only, right? Like they only, if you're having your sons, Tara, it's like, well, call me if you need me. I guess that's the only time you'll call me. Every child has their own challenges, and thank you so much, to the moms here sharing today. That Queen of Pentacles is that mother wound, and it goes both ways. It's the wound that we carry that relates to our own mothers, and it's the wound that we might carry as a mother or mother figure in the world to others who are just doing our best in imperfect, chaotic, and extraordinarily painful circumstances where there's no owner's manual or guidebook telling you how to handle everything. So that's our 4 wicked witches, our queens when they've gone rogue. When the queens are in a negative position, when they're, in an unhealthy situation, when there's a lot of difficulty flying around, trauma, codependency, whatever else it is, whenever there's difficult situations and you get that queen reversed, really look at it to see, does it represent a person? Does it represent a set of conditions or experiences? Does it represent the querent and some aspect of themselves that they need to get in touch with? Or does it represent something different that has something to do with patriarchal mechanisms in our society that deny us agency? I mean, that frustrated Queen of Wands, I've known so many women who are frustrated Queen of Wands. They could have run the Chrysler Corporation, they could have run the Empire State Building. but they never got the chance. I've known so many Queen of Swords who were bitter because they felt unheard and nobody really, and that people stopped listening. And so they just started to shrink in on themselves and feel resentful. I've known so many Queen of Cups who, through desperately wanting validation, have tried to get emotionally involved with others and then made a mess of those emotional connections because it was too cloying. And I've known many Queens of Pentacles who got blamed for shit that they didn't do, or who got blamed for stuff that was beyond their control. In all of these cases, if you have a reverse queen, you've got pain there. And that pain can be healed by exposing it to the light of day, applying the antidotes that are there in the cards around it, and by looking to see, when will this cycle end? And you can give yourself or your querent plenty of relief in doing 3 cards on top of any reverse queen to find out exactly that. How long is this going to go on? What will it look like? How will I know when it's done? And what do I need to do to get there? So we have just like 1 or 2 minutes in case anyone has any questions. Is there anybody today who has any questions about our wicked witches?
Can I just ask a question of the group?
Sure, Tara.
Is everybody a reader? Everybody who's on this?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm just.
I mean, I don't know if everybody here is a professional reader, but we're all here because we like tarot cards and we, we'll do readings for ourselves at the very least.
I'm overwhelmed when you've done more than 10,000 readings at what you can get out of the cards. It's truly remarkable, and thank you.
Oh, thank you, Tara. Well, I am glad I can have a space to share some of what I've learned from the past 20 years of my life. And certainly there's always more to learn. And when the cards want me to learn something, they show it to me very unambiguously. Like I'll get that same card again and again and again in readings for days, or I'll get something where I look at something and I might think to myself, oh, I don't want it to mean that, but I know that's exactly what it means. And so, I've learned myself the hard way just from doing my own readings. So there's certainly, for anybody reading for yourself or reading for others, there's so much to still be explored. And I think I've only I feel like I've only barely scratched the surface in what I could know, but hopefully I've got plenty more years of readings, another 20,000 in me at least. So, all right, everyone, I'm going to say goodbye. I don't see any other questions today. Giving you a lot of appreciation. Thank you so much for coming and being here with me. Hope this was helpful. Hope it lends some precision to your readings, and maybe next month, or maybe we'll skip a month on this subject, but we'll come and do the kings at some point. Everybody gets a fair shake, right? Not just the mothers. Okay. Bye.
Wonderful. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.